Now thrive the Armourers. Hello, I'm Guy Wilson, and Liveryman K. Smith and I are your guides through the 700 years of the Armourers and Brasiers Company.
We come now to the last podcast in our series, tracing the history of the company over the last 700 years. Nicky Davies, past master of the company, sums up the various strands that make up the company today.
To my mind, there are 5 important strands in the company. There is, first of all, our material science work. There is the importance of the hall and our wonderful collection of objects in it. Then there is the importance of our charitable giving. And then, of course, there is the fellowship, which is very important amongst our members, and our connections with the City of London and the wider livery world, and indeed with the armed services.
We are so fortunate to have our own hall, one that has survived the vicissitudes of the centuries. But as liveryman and former clerk Peter Bateman recalls, it must never be taken for granted.
Armourers Hall is, as you know, a scheduled ancient monument and a Grade 2 listed building. That means that it's old and creaky in places. She's a wonderful girl, but she's getting on in years. And I remember with horror to this day, a big event that was planned in the hall. I was sitting in my office and was suddenly aware of rain falling. Not rain falling outside, but rain falling inside the hall. I rushed round to the back corridor, which was looking like a tropical rainforest. Water was pouring in through the roof into the kitchen.
It is so important to look after the hall because, as Roger Bowdler, currently master, tells us, it is such a vital part of the life of the company.
The Armourers and Brasiers are really lucky to have such a wonderful hall, and every time I come into it, it just lifts my spirits. It takes time, it takes trouble, and it takes money. My background is one of historic buildings, and I've always been keen to try and reinforce or perhaps return some of the historic character of the building. And last year we undertook a redecoration exercise that led to the repainting of the entrance and the staircase and the first floor landing in what were the original colours of the 1841 building.
The building is the company's greatest asset, of course. Many people say it's just the right size to be grand enough, but still friendly and welcoming to all. And this is important, as Tracy Little, our membership secretary, reminds us.
I think that's what the company wants the feel of this to be, is a family. It's all about fellowship, and it's about a friendly place to come and visit and meet up with fellow members. And that's obviously what we try and foster through all communication with the company. And I enjoy meeting the members. That's part of the job that gives me most enjoyment.
What is perhaps not always clear to members is just how large the company is today. Tracy again.
We have about 330 members, of which approximately 140 are liverymen and about 191 in the Freedom.
One of our major activities is charitable giving, and Anne-Marie Clift, our charities secretary, explains how we go about this.
So we give in 2 general areas. Small charities in what we describe as general charitable giving. So that comes under 4 headings: children, youth and education, community and armed forces, medical and health, and general education. And then separately to that, we give about 2/3 of our grants each year in support of materials science education in the UK.
But we have not forgotten our origins. Anne-Marie again.
So, of course, many centuries ago, the armourers made and supplied equipment to the armies of the king. And we regard the armed forces in the UK as our earliest customers. And in recognition of that long relationship and heritage, we have 9 military affiliations, and they are recognised by the award of Armourers and Brasiers prizes for technical excellence.
Increasingly, the charitable focus of the company has been channelled towards what is now called material science, as Mike Goulet, former master of the company, explains.
In 2005, the Metals Committee, which was founded back in 1986, was renamed the Material Science Committee, and this was to recognise the fact that material science was now a much broader science than just the science of metals and metallurgy. So material science now covers everything from nanomaterials through structural materials such as steels, biomaterials, superalloys used in gas turbines to operate at very high temperatures. And it is fundamental to the way that the world operates in the 21st century.
Indeed, it is so fundamental that the company's support is now increasingly directed towards educating the next generation of scientists. Mike again.
So today the Material Science Committee supports material science education from school level through undergraduate through to postgraduate. So the whole range of ages of people learning about material science, its relevance to modern society, and how important it is to underpinning everything that we do in the scientific world in this part of the 21st century.
But to be really effective, giving has to be done in the right way, as Anne-Marie explains.
So across all our charitable giving, we have developed a partnership approach. So in our science work, we work closely with 7 leading universities with material science departments, and we're also awarding academic prizes in 13 other universities. Our work in support of science education is in partnership with leading companies who have a particular interest in developing the talent pipeline of young material scientists. We're currently working with 3 industrial partners: AWE, which is the Atomic Weapons Establishment, Rolls-Royce, which is at the cutting edge of aerospace technology and nuclear, and the Materials Processing Institute, which is a research institute currently focused on the decarbonising steel agenda. Our relationship with the partners is not just about grant making, it's also very much about bridging the gap between education and industry. So through those partnerships we create opportunities for young people to get to know the opportunities available to them to develop their careers in material science in industry.
The company is committed to finding new ways to help research and work in this field, and some 15 years ago it established the Venture Prize, as Mike explains.
The logic behind the Venture Prize is that we give a £25,000 prize to a start-up in material science. These are usually spin-outs from universities. They're in the very early stages of setting up their business. And what we do is we give them £25,000 to really get the business off the ground. And that £25,000 is an equity stake. So we actually take an equity in the business rather than just giving it as a grant. The other thing that it gives them is that our name actually is an important asset to them. And what we find is on the back of getting the prize from the company, that really helps those fledgling businesses to go out and attract additional funding. So we have 14 of those to date. At least one of those has been bought up by an outside company and delivered a significant return to its stakeholders, and many others are growing very rapidly at this point in time.
The recent pandemic challenged not only our charitable giving, but the very essence of the company itself, as Peter Bateman explains.
The pandemic has been a huge challenge to the livery world in general, and obviously to the Armourers and Brasiers, because at the heart of what a livery company does is fellowship. Fellowship amongst members and with other livery companies is a key element of what we do on a day-to-day basis. And if you're not in a position to enjoy that fellowship face-to-face, shoulder-to-shoulder, side-by-side, the pandemic dealt a real blow to the ability of livery companies to sponsor togetherness. Luckily, in a way, we exist in the 21st century. The pandemic happened at a time when we were still able to communicate with members. So along with other livery companies, we were able to limp through the pandemic in the absence of face-to-face meetings and dinners and lunches and celebrations. We were at least able to remain in contact with them, which did mean that we were able to keep the ethos of the company functioning whilst under terrible pressure.
The company survived that challenge, as it always has, and in 2022 celebrated its 700th anniversary. To mark this momentous occasion, it decided to endow a professorial chair in materials science, as Mike Goulet explains.
As part of the 700th anniversary celebrations of the company, the court, with the help of the Materials Science Committee, decided that it was time to do something which was a real legacy for the company. And what we decided to do was to endow a chair at one of the major universities in the UK that was working in material science. This was set up as a competition. We had some excellent presentations and proposals from the universities, but at the end of the day it was Imperial College, with which we've had a very long relationship over many years, that actually won. What we agreed as part of that was that the endowment of the chair would be in perpetuity, so that the Armourers and Brasiers chair in material science will be there hopefully for many, many years to come. We also agreed with them that the Armourers and Brasiers company would be part of the process of selecting the person who was going to be taking that chair. And we were delighted that the first holder of the chair is Professor Mary Ryan, who has a tremendous track record in material science.
Mary Ryan, our new professor, tells us why she applied for the position, why materials science is so important, and why the company's initiative is so appropriate.
It's an amazing privilege to be the first Armourers and Brasiers chair. One of the reasons I applied for the role was because I think as an organisation, the history of the company, the legacy of the company is founded in materials and craftsmanship, but with a really progressive idea around how to support material science. I find is a really compelling narrative, so building on legacy. In my own research, I've also done a lot of work with heritage organisations, so understanding how to protect artefacts in museums, for example, and recognising that there's a thread of history through materials. We define our civilizations by the materials they use. But the future of materials is a combination of all those previous histories. And so being able to build on that legacy whilst being future-facing, I think is really compelling.
So, there we are, the Armourers and Brasiers, an organisation with a very long history, but now promoting scientific research critical to all our futures. Past Master Nikki Davis sums up.
The Armourers and Brasiers, to my mind, is an absolutely fascinating company because it is an amazing mixture of history and art, but also cutting-edge material science. And that, I think, is a unique combination amongst livery companies.
We've certainly come a long way from that moment 700 years ago when London armourers came together to regulate their trade.
De Lanshull, Richard de Kent, Gilo Lehoberger, Hugh Lahoma, Master Richard Lahoma, Simon Lahoma, Robert de Skelton, John...
But what of the future? Mary Ryan looks ahead and suggests just what the company could do over the coming decades.
I think one thing that the company does really well is advocate for material science. And I know that going forward, we are going to need material science to be at the forefront of new technologies. The motto of the Armourers, "We are one," I think speaks to a really inclusive community. And some of that inclusion needs to be more broadly broadcast. One role I think the company could have, or could expand at least, is as a convener of the community. It works very well supporting students and academic organisations. It links into industry. But given that materials is really at the heart of all of our current challenges, particularly around sustainability of resources, net zero, there's a real need to bring together multiple stakeholders, from communities to industry to government and academics and the general population. And so I think there's a role for a neutral space that has a trusted history and is a values-based organisation. I think maybe to be, the voice of materials.
As we go forward, the company is in rude health. always trying to do better, always trying to secure a better future, trying to live up to our mottos, make all sure and we are one.
The Worshipful Company of Armourers and Brasiers, root and branch, may they ever continue one.
This has been a Past Master production for Basilisco Press. Our thanks to Peter Bateman, Roger Bowdler, Anne-Marie Clift, Nikki Davis, Mike Goulet, Tracy Liddle and Mary Ryan. And a very special thank you to the voice that has read the quotations throughout this series, the voice of Peter Wood. Goodbye, and thank you for listening.